Well, today is truly going to be something special, both in the topic of the day and the guest star tuning in to discuss it. A lot of people love the Urbanmech, it's like the community's favorite little angry meme machine. Any bad talk is met with a hail of no Kirby the Urbie or angry trash can noises filling the comment section. So, armed with that knowledge, and at the request of our guest of the day, we're covering the walking turret, the siege mech, the pile of guns in the shape of a boat pretending to be a mech. A 100-ton inner sphere assault mech focused on overwhelming firepower and the definition of applying forehead to problem until the problem dies. Or, to keep things far more simple, the Annihilator. 4 urban mechs in a trench coat. On the docket for the day is a history of the mech's development, since it's all over the place and arguably the only mech that belongs to the Star League in exile as a faction, since it was designed before the Exodus, built before the clans, and first used by the Wolf's Dragoons before the invasion of the Inner Sphere. So there's a very confusing history about this thing. After that, we'll dive into the technical aspects of it, like all the weapons, the lack of armor, since it is a huge glass cannon, and finishing off with a look at some fun facts, notable events, and a little bit of its battle history. But first, introductions and begging for subscribers, this time with a surprise! Welcome to Science Insanity, a channel dedicated to bringing my love of sci-fi in all forms to you, the viewer. If you do end up enjoying the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all that, since it really does help a smaller channel like this fight the YouTube algorithm, especially when we make more niche content. If you're feeling extra generous, consider checking out Sai's Patreon, maybe buy me a coffee to help with the editing in those late nights. Or if you just want to hang out with a small community of fellow turbo nerds, we got a Discord, everything linked in the video description below. And normally, this would be where I introduced my co-host Steve, the soulless gremlin locked in my basement serving as the comedic relief and science illiterate. But today, we actually have a special guest, someone significantly more respectable, another content creator, someone who has made a massive mistake by allowing themselves to be dragged down to the peasantry with someone like me. May I introduce... He's laughing in the background right now. May I introduce the Star Trek guy himself, Venom Geek Media. Say hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So yes, I am Venom Geek Media, the infamous Venom Geek Media, as some of you may know me, some of you may not. I cover primarily Star Trek on my channel, and not because it's the only sci-fi I like. Oddly enough, I do like other sci-fi, up to and including battletech. I have been, in recent years, corrupted by some friends, and yes, this is going to be a very interesting video. The Annihilator is probably my favorite mech, for better or for worse.
In lore, probably for worse. In most games, it's pretty fun, because having like 20 ginormous guns stapled to your forehead is always a pretty good time, but there's going to be some ups and downs. And it's a pleasure to have you on. It's the first collaboration the channel's done, so, well, we'll see how it works out. Hopefully it goes well. And to any of Venom's fans that might have stumbled across this, as you heard him, got corrupted into Battletech, we got him. The Battletech brain rot is spreading. He plays MechWarrior games now. It's too late for him, and soon every single one of you will be hopelessly addicted to this stupid universe. Or you'll click off, because, you know, I'm a professional idiot. Either or, really.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
So, I hope you're excited. You did say that this was your favorite mech, or at least the one you thought was the funnest and most enjoyable to play when we had that that MechWarrior session.
It is a magnificent machine.
It's a whale. I hate it. I'm really glad you enjoy it, but I do not like it. You
have no taste, sir.
It's just a big urban mech. I hate the urban mech, and I hate this thing.
Hey. The urban mech can look behind itself. The Annihilator can see barely anything.
That's a whole nother case of worms, but we'll get into that a little bit later with the Annihilator being unable to scratch its own back. This mech actually sits in a very, very strange in-between of post-Succession War Inner Sphere, Star League era, and clan ownership of the design. For most of the media that I've seen, it's pretty much exclusively listed as an Inner Sphere mech, and when you have stuff like MechWarrior Online, I'm pretty sure it's an Inner Sphere mech there as well.
There's a couple of hero variants, so there's some later clan variants like the Gausszilla, which updates it to be clan with clan Gauss rifles and clan hags, and it's obscene.
So we're gonna get to that. The Gausszilla is not it's not really clan. No, it's the Gausszilla is kind of a funny in-joke for the Battletech community. We'll get to that later. It's not really clan, but we can put it there. There's a version of it that's similar. So the reason its history is so weird is because it was built during an incredibly awkward point for Battletech's history. The Star League at the era where it was actually designed was still embroiled in an all-out civil war between Kerensky and the loyalist Star League Defense Force, and the usurper Stefan Amaris, also known as Fat Genghis Khan. The fighting was taking years by this point, and was devolving into such brutality and miserable fighting across human colonized space that multiple new mechs, warships, weapons, technologies, and strategies were especially developed by both sides during the conflict in an attempt to bring some kind of favorable conclusion to the fighting, or hold off the inevitable in the case of Amaris and getting boxed in on Terra.
Kerensky thought that his spooky, scary skeleton wasn't enough anymore.
To be honest, if the Atlas and the Annihilator walked around a corner and saw each other, the Annihilator would probably get its shit rocked. Like, it doesn't have that much armor, and the Atlas is a walking bunker. It would probably win just on endurance alone at that close range, but if they fought at a longer range, yeah, the Annihilator would probably win. Each of the 100-ton assault mechs does its own thing. They're usually pretty unique compared to each other and how they're best employed.
I was just gonna say, just because it's funny that, of course, you've got the literal giant walking skeleton, and they somehow decide that they need something that is even scarier than that, because the big scary skeleton walking onto the battlefield with massive cannons and missiles and lasers wasn't enough.
Well, I mean, the Atlas isn't... yeah, the Atlas is more meant to very slowly grind the enemy down. At every step it takes, more things die. It's got to be fairly close to remove them from the census, but, you know, it's the slow and steady steamroller that's going to roll over a city. The Annihilator is more of a, this is my highway, anyone who steps on it will not be on my highway for much longer kind of thing. So they do different things.
Well, I was about to say, the Annihilator, critically, you say Atlas, slow and steady, Annihilator, basically unable to tell if it's even moving.
It's a turret. If you have direct line of sight to it, you've made a mistake. That's the easiest way to put it.
It's like, yeah, the Starly came that close to just doing their own Matar.
Okay, the Matar could barely even move. I'm surprised you know about that, but good for you.
Yes.
That thing was an absolute meme. It deserved to be buried in a radioactive wasteland for 500 years. So during the final year of the conflict, 2779, the SLDF was winning decisively, but as they pushed further and further into the highly developed and populated systems at the core of human space, the urban fighting was becoming more and more costly. Casualty rates were spiking, and the attrition of material and supplies were reaching a critical level. To address this, the Annihilator was designed for a very simple purpose: to quickly and efficiently obliterate anything and everything in its line of sight, moving methodically through cities and cluttered environments to sweep the usurper's forces from the rubble. However, it never really got the chance, because while the Annihilator 1X, the prototype design, was finished shortly after and would have been put into full production, the war came to an end before it could, and the following political shenanigans and stability of the Star League were far more pressing issues for Kerensky and the upper leadership to deal with. Since the throne of the Star League was now left open, every single head of the great houses morphed into seagulls and started screaming "mine" at the top of their lungs while threatening to start throwing nukes, directly from one war to another. Eventually, Kerensky and the SLDF just gave up and began the big nope, or the Exodus, taking all the warships, all the mechs, all the tech, pretty much everything that wasn't bolted down and half the stuff that was, on a massive exodus deep into the outer periphery into what would later be known as the Pentagon Stars and the homeworlds of the clans. The Annihilator schematics and prototypes followed suit. The only indication of its existence remaining in the inner sphere were Comstar documents, because they have literally everything and there's literally nothing in the setting that they don't know. But it wasn't really like technical documents and stuff, it was more a vague suggestion that, yep, the Annihilator was in fact a thing, it did exist, it was real, and, you know, it doesn't exist in the inner sphere now, more than they were any form of concrete information about it.
Just like for the rest of its life, the Annihilator was late to its own birth.
That is a rather...
It was perfect foreshadowing.
Yep, that's a pretty good way to put it.
Couldn't even get to the war it was built for.
Nope. It did manage to find another war far later on, although it was once again technically fighting on the wrong side, so a little bit of a clumsy juggernaut, that thing, but it is what it is. It tries its hardest. It certainly looks like it's trying its hardest at all times.
It's like an old man with arthritis.
Its knees and feet are extremely arthritic. I cannot move. The first time the mech was actually built was shortly after the SLDF in Exile landed on their new homeworlds. However, information from this time is extremely fuzzy and I couldn't really find much to corroborate exact dates or times, but the best information I could find states that shortly before the 5-way civil war that happened after Kerensky kicked the bucket at the age of like 110, that was around when the Annihilator was first built. And the clans popped up only a few years after that when there was a second exodus farther away and Kerensky's son created the space eugenicists we know and love. So it's in that weird area where technically the Annihilator is a domestic design of the Star League in Exile, since it was never built by the Star League proper and it was subsumed by the clans later after that. How many they were built and what role they served in is completely up in the air. The information I could find suggests that, like many of the other legacy mechs that the clans had from the Star League era, they created them, preserved them in small numbers, and used them more as symbols of status, power, and history than anything else. The Annihilator was directly described as being symbols of the Star League's power and the heritage that the clans drew from. So more of a museum piece than anything else.
Old museum piece for a thing that didn't actually fight.
Well, yeah, but you gotta remember the clans have like a pseudo-religious obsession with Kerensky. Big Daddy Soupstock is their god, so they'll put like a random manual on how to properly maintain a toilet up in a museum as a holy article if it was written by the Star League.
Yeah, well, it's like you get, in certain military museums, you go to the tank museums, and there's some tanks there that are brilliant, they're excellent, but especially like the Tank Museum Bovington, there's some brilliant tanks that have very illustrious careers, and then there's some things in there are very lucky that they never saw the light of day.
I love how you described that like something out of Lord of the Rings. There were deep, dark things in there that have never seen the light of day. Like it's
seen the light of day.
It's just an ugly tank. Why are we being so dramatic? It's just a really stupid vehicle.
Oh no. There's ugly tanks, and then there's the things that you find that the British tank designers were coming up with in the interwar years.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. British tank design was in fact a thing. They didn't just use the American tanks rebranded.
No. Why would we do that?
British engineering, truly the most strange, best, worst, all of the above in the world.
Yes. I mean, look, it's generally it's all just built by blokes down in sheds in Devon. And who knows what they're going to come up with. It's real Wallace and Gromit stuff.
Like, this is so off topic and I might edit it out, but like, isn't that just like the British thing that you guys develop all your shit in a shed? It's like 3 random dudes with a few beers in their backyard tool shed. Like, you literally developed your first atomic weapon in a fucking shed. Like, that's actually how the British did it. You figured out the designs by a couple guys working in their backyard. Like, I don't understand how. How do you do this?
Because the brilliant thing here is that it's so stupid, no one will see it coming, you see. It's like the Mosquito reconnaissance plane. It's a paper friggin' plane in the Second World War. The Germans would probably just like, that is silly, we want to make paper planes anymore. But then I'm pretty sure what just happened is a bunch of guys were just like, I say, Carruthers, you remember when we were in prep school? And we used to make those paper planes, and Mr. Bramley would tell us off for it. And it's, oh yes, it was very good, jolly good fun. What if we did a big one, a big full-size paper plane, and we use it to recon on the Bosch?
Oh my god. That's the most cursed thing I've ever heard. That's staying in the video. That's so terrible. It's great. You've gone full circle.
Yes. It's like I just send you a picture of it's just an example of iterating on a concept and it just getting sillier and sillier. This is Black Prince. For those of you that know tanks, this is basically using the chassis of a Churchill tank, which had a 6-pounder gun, which was okay, infantry support tank, pretty good. They then decided, we're going to turn this into our new main battle tank and put a 17-pounder gun in it. And change nothing else.
Isn't that what they did with the Firefly as well? They're
didn't go well.
They're just like, I want to put a bigger gun in the Firefly, but they're like, we can't make it fit, so they're like, put it sideways. It's still too big for the turret now. It's like, cut a hole in the back so we can push the radio back. It's like, the tank is unbalanced because of the weight of the gun. Add more ballast to the back. The engine's not strong enough. Strap 5 car engines together. It's just, it's the most...
Yes, that's a potential history classic meme.
Yeah, that thing is so dumb. Anyways, actually getting back on track like 5 minutes out of the way. God damn you, Britain, and your endless shenanigans and hijinks. Stay away from my content. So, the first time the Annihilator actually did anything of note was when the clans sent a group of warriors posing as mercenaries called the Wolf's Dragoons to the Inner Sphere to scout and spy on all the major players. And in case you don't know, the Inner Sphere was stagnant for like 300 years, so the concept of new wasn't really a thing when it came to military hardware. The best anyone got was managing to get something really old working again in a somewhat functional state. And I want to point out, the clans sent the Wolves Dragoons with like the oldest shit they had. So the Annihilator was an ancient museum piece that the clans downgraded from the versions that they had and then sent with the Wolves Dragoons, and they're like, this should be fine. It should be okay. These are like ancient mechs. They're like 700 years old. Surely nobody would care if these show up randomly. So when the Wolves Dragoons turned up at the edge of the Inner Sphere, boating around tons of incredibly rare, old, and highly powerful mechs, people raised an eyebrow. Very confused eyebrow, but they raised one.
Hello, fellow freeborns. How do you do, fellow Inner Spheres?
With all the facial tattoos, the 7-foot-tall, genetically enhanced soldiers and all that, yeah.
Next to my 100-ton assault.
But you could kind of wave that off, right? Like you could justify it. You're like, oh, whatever. They came from the periphery. Maybe they found an SLDF cache, or some rich patron went museum raiding or something to find these. Then you looked at the wholly unique and never seen before mechs like the Annihilators, and people went from a single raised eyebrow to both eyebrows up, along with both hands, with both guns. Excuse me? What is that? Where did you get it? How did you get it? What the hell is going on with that? It was absolutely mind-blowing, because the best new mech that was really developed by that point was like the Hatchet Man, which was extremely mediocre at the best of times.
Where'd you get that? It fell off a drop ship. What kind of drop ship? You know, a drop ship.
No, it's like that old iCarly meme. Dude sitting in the cockpit of the Annihilator. What you got there? A smoothie? Completely dodging the question. So, the Dragoons promptly answered all of those questions with 4 words. None of your business. They simply refused outright to share any information on what they were, because they're clan spies, and they're planning on invading the Inner Sphere en masse. They don't want to give anything away. So random enemy commanders would try a bog standard strategy to deal with an assault mech and end up as a pile of scrap and bullet casings, because, well, you're running headfirst into a giant pile of guns. The Dragoons were also so effective on the battlefield and so tight-lipped that they pretty much stayed exclusively in their use for like 60 years. The thing that finally opened up the mech's use was during the Jihad era, which we won't talk about because it's awful, where the Word of Blake religious zealots launched a surprise attack on the Dragoons' home base World of Outreach, stealing anything and everything they could during the fighting, before they eventually got pushed back.
Hippity hoppity, your mech is now my property.
So that's pretty much exactly what they were trying to do, because I'm not even going to talk about it, I'm not even going to explain it, I don't even want to think about the Jihad, it's terrible, it's such god-awful writing. The Free Worlds League literally voted to disband the Free Worlds League. It is class 0 writing. It is the dumbest smooth brain stuff ever. I hate it.
there's a lot of things the Free Worlds League will do, but disband the Free Worlds League? I mean, how could they wind each other up if they're not in the same nation together? I thought that was the whole point of the Free Worlds League. They hate each other, but they also hate these other guys. So while we're not hating each other, we'll hate these other people.
I know! It's so dumb. We have democratically voted to end democracy. Goodbye. And then all of their neighbors didn't do anything about it. So the Word of Blake basically gave these designs to a Lyran Commonwealth factory called Ark Royal Mech Works, which promptly began building the Annihilator since, hey my dudes, free mech design, why not? Even now though, in the current year of Battletech story, the Annihilator is excruciatingly rare. You see, Ark Royal Mech Works, ironically, isn't like a state-owned factory. It was family-owned by another mercenary outfit called the Kellhounds. Often this mech factory was exclusively used just to supply and augment those mercs, and rarely sold to the other great houses or buyers. So in the current year, the only people that really have them in any amount, like above 1 or 2, are the Dragoons, who can build them, the Kellhounds, who can build them, and the Clans, who can build them, but don't start until years later with the refit clan version because they're busy with their Omnimechs and their random War of Reaving garbage. And obviously, none of those factions are sharing, because nobody shares anything in Battletech. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine if you don't defend it.
Sharing is for losers and people who don't have nice mechs. Sharing is for Capellans. Because they don't have anything good anyway.
So, whenever you see games like MechWarrior 5 that lets you use the Annihilator, or you can just, buy them in reasonably large numbers, it's highly questionable, because, where the hell would you even get it? Otherwise, no, it's very rare. And for the most part, that's the history of the Annihilator. It's been kicking around for a very long time as design schematics or museum pieces, and only really got used and introduced to the Inner Sphere once the clans came back to start spying on them.
You say kicking around, I would more say it's sort of been ambling/bimbling around.
I guess, yeah, with his...
Kicking is a bit too dynamic.
I'm pretty sure, just like the Urbanmech, if you were on a bicycle, the average cyclist could outrun this mech in a straight line. That's how slow it is. It's suffering.
Probably.
It's suffering, man. Now let's move on a little bit to more of the fun stuff, which is how the mech is somehow both a bigger, better version of the Urbanmech and a bigger, worse version of the Urbanmech at the same time. Let's start with how it was employed and why it has a huge number of pretty trash design elements. It may look cool, you may enjoy playing it in the video games, but I'm telling you, man, this thing has some major problems.
Bold, sir. Prepare to receive my bachal.
No.
Dare refuse my bachal?
Yes. Or what was the line? Who is this clown? What is he saying? What's he talking about?
Who's this guy?
Who's this guy?
Yo, what?
So, like we mentioned earlier on, the optimal way to employ it is as a turret, ready and waiting to vaporize any unfriendly that happens to walk around the corner and onto whatever highway it's guarding. The entire reason for this is because the Annihilator is pretty much incapable of moving, as we've memed on multiple times. It is quite literally tied for the slowest mech in the setting, only the Urbie being able to compete with it for magnitude of I cannot move. While there are no direct sources confirming this, I also think this ties in with the aesthetic of the mech and the tactics it was meant for, since being slow doesn't really matter for its employed strategy. I'm of course talking about the fact that this thing is absolutely massive. The Annihilator is a walking version of the 5'11" versus 6 foot meme. It's the 6 foot part. It's one of the tallest mechs in the setting, even standing over things like the Atlas.
Yes, and often over hills that it's trying to hide behind.
Oh, yes. In fact, I may have an image that compares it to the Atlas. We've been very light on visuals so far because, for the most part, Steve is far more visually unaware than you are, so the fact that you not only have your own images and stuff makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, if you actually compare them, I think that's even a little bit skewed. The Annihilator is almost like a full head height taller than the Atlas. This thing is absolutely massive. It's a whale. It's so big.
You'd think it would be useful to have your cockpit up there, and to an extent it is, until you realize that your guns are not.
Oh, it's not just that. Like, there's an entire segment where I basically just complain about how low the hard points are because, holy shit, it's not a fun experience to be like, well, like half my mech is exposed. I think I got enough clearance to fire, and then half of your weapons hit the ground in front of you. The cockpit placement is really weird on top of the huge giraffe neck. Like, most of the time, humanoid battlemechs look profoundly inbred because of their very strong chins and the fact that they have no neck. That's for a reason. You generally don't want any extra height on your mech more than necessary since it makes it harder to hide behind cover, it's easier for the enemy to identify and target you at long range, and it reduces your ability to ridge peek or really be survivable, because if people can take pot shots at your mech at the cockpit or whatever from long range while you can't shoot back, that's a huge disadvantage.
Yes, but you're forgetting the most important part of this design, Sai, is not anything practical like that. It's that you look like a Jafar from Stargate.
Oh no, not the stupid.
And suffer the same impracticalities as they did.
Oh no, they literally abandoned that in like the second season because it was such impractical garbage and it was so dumb. No.
But it was so cool. I haven't seen any out there. Small tangent, but I really want to find some bloopers of just the Jafar walking into the set, because I'm sure there must be. I'm sure there were takes where the Jafar just, when they were meant to be marching down a corridor, just hit a wall or a pillar.
So, one thing about the cockpit though, which, again, this is not canon, there's no real information to support this, however, it seems too perfect of an explanation for me to ignore, and that's the specific environment the original Annihilator was designed to work in, being cities and urban sprawl. That kind of cockpit design could actually be really good. Most of those downsides would be non-factors because cities tend to be flat grid shapes, which are much harder to flank in if you're part of a battle line, and the extra cockpit height would let pilots see over shorter buildings while presenting a smaller target for return fire. They wouldn't have to fully step out from around the corner of like a low rise or something in order to actually see what's down a street.
And that would be absolutely terrifying. Be in your little, let's say your little urban mech or any kind of small mech, you think you're safe behind a building, and then you just see this giant snake head looming up from the other side, like, hello!
Yeah, you're like, what's that Jaffa-looking thing peering at me from the other side of that, like, low-rise communal building over there? What's going on? And then the Annihilator walks around the corner.
It doesn't walk around the corner. That takes too long. It's just gonna walk through the building.
Well, I mean, it's got so many guns, it could probably just shoot through the building, but yeah, either or works.
Just shoot through the building.
Hello, peekaboo, goodbye. The total interaction that most mechs have with the Annihilator. Personal preference, though, I really don't like the look. It looks really, really stupid. It's on the level with some of the dumbest looking mechs in the entire setting, just because I can't get over the head. If they had done what they did with like the crab or like the archer or something and just put the cockpit at the front of the chest and had like all the guns be around it or something, I would genuinely argue that the Annihilator would be one of the best designed in the setting, but that cockpit alone completely destroys it. It's so stupid, I hate it.
But then you've just got a stalker with arms.
Oh.
The giant snake head. You can't not have the giant snake head.
Okay, to be fair, yeah, I guess it would be like just the battle blimp with arms, but fair enough. But now let's move on to the raw statistics of the mech. The first version ever seen and used for combat in the setting was the 1A. This mech was the one that the Wolf's Dragoons brought with them, and the quote-unquote ancient version that the clans actually had. It was equipped with 4 normal autocannon 10s and 4 bog standard medium lasers. Individually, none of these are particularly special. Most mechs in the setting from medium up will carry at least one or multiple of these kinds of armaments, but boating 4 AC-10s gave the Annihilators a terrifying opening alpha strike, or, if chain-fired, a withering amount of continuous fire and a huge psychological element. Never underestimate how hard an enemy will panic if they are getting power-slapped rapidly and repeatedly by a bunch of really big autocannons. It's probably the easiest way to get your opponent to stop shooting back and run for the nearest cover.
It's difficult to fight when your entire world is shaking and just filled with exploding autocannon shells.
If you put like different kinds of chemical explosive in there, so they blew up like red or yellow or green or something rather than just orange, it would literally be like a disco rave. Oh my god, all of the lights, everything is shaking, and I can't hear anymore. Fantastic.
I should have popped some LSD before doing this.
I'm not even high, and I'm on the weirdest trip ever, man.
Yep, and that's the last trip you'll ever have.
So the 4 medium lasers as well were essentially just there to help the mech deal with anything smaller that got in close. Autocannon 10s are generally pretty good at all ranges, as most autocannons are, but they do struggle a little bit when things get really, really close, especially for the Annihilator, because its traverse rate for the torso is really slow, and its angles of fire are not great. So having the lasers be something that you can just sweep across a target, like a light mech or something that's trying to sneak up on you, makes the Annihilator, or gives the Annihilator, I should say, a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more survivability at medium to close range. Especially, and it really needs it, because its armor is not great.
I mean, it's still a 100-ton assault mech, so armor not great. Look, we live in a world where the Charger exists, so...
Oh, okay, yeah.
Glass houses and all that.
To be fair, but when you have a 100-ton assault mech, the general idea is that it's going to be fairly survivable, and the Annihilator, compared to most other 100 tons, just isn't.
It doesn't need that kind of protection when it has that many guns.
Yes and no. If you can drop kick the enemy straight into the Shadow Realm the moment you see them, fair enough.
Yes.
If you just cover yourself in swords, it doesn't really matter if the enemy's got a whole bunch of guns. If you can turn them into confetti before they can shoot, who cares? But the problem with that is, the Annihilator didn't have much armor, which means in a lot of cases, when the more brawly or assault-focused vehicles did get up on it, something like a Warhammer or a Battlemaster or an Atlas managed to get in close, the Annihilator could find itself very quickly disabled just because it didn't have the endurance to tank the heavy firepower that a lot of its comparable vehicles would be able to put out. Like, an Atlas would probably die to an Annihilator if it had to walk from multiple kilometers away. If they walked around a corner and came face to face at point blank range, the Atlas could probably beat the Annihilator to death before the Annihilator could actually bring its firepower to bear. So that was really the biggest weakness of the mech, coupled with the fact that Battletech is combined arms, so you have lots of artillery, lots of airstrikes, lots of long-range missile support generally, and tons of infantry running around. If the Annihilator ever actually got into medium to close range combat, there's a very good chance it would just die.
Yeah, in MWO, the enemy team, when they see you're an Annihilator, they delight on calling in airstrikes on you, and it's extremely annoying, because you've just found a lovely, lovely sniping position to just whack everyone, and you see red smoke. Sometimes you don't even try to move. You just say, you know what? I like it here, and I can't be bothered to move. I'm too slow anyway. I'll just take this one.
Shooting the enemy 3 more times is worth more than eating the damage from this airstrike. I am simply going to sit here.
Yes.
However, very quickly on, the Annihilator would go under a few refits. So while that was its default weapon loadout with like 17 heat sinks to give it cooling, because 4 medium lasers, 4 autocannons doesn't generate that much heat, there were more advanced versions of it that would be rapidly built as the need arose. One version, my personal favorite, is the quote-unquote modern version of it that is built by Arc Royal Mech Works in the modern day. Essentially, all they've done is replace the LBXs, or replace the autocannon 10s with the LBX variant, and replace the medium lasers with pulse lasers, making a little bit more extra room in the chassis so that it can still carry a decent number of heat sinks. Do you know what the LBX and the pulses are? I assume you do. You play MechWarrior Online.
The LBX is like a giant shotgun, and the pulse lasers are disco lasers.
Yeah, so in the actual setting, what's different between them is that the LBXs carry their damage a lot further than normal autocannons, because the actual shells it's firing, the shrapnel, is much lighter, so you can hit people significantly farther away and do a reasonable amount of damage. The problem is they spread out, so instead of doing pinpoint damage and blowing the leg off a light mech, for example, like a normal AC-10 would, it just strips some of the armor and does a little bit of damage to the side torso or something. The pulse lasers are much better at doing damage to things, but are less effective at being swept across a target, because the pulse lasers Well, instead of doing the damage in a beam, it does it in like 4 or 5 pulses. So you'll do a lot more damage per pulse, but you might just outright miss with a laser, which is kind of counterintuitive, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. The reason I like this one though, LBXs are fantastic. I love the idea of a car-sized shotgun used for hunting mechs. It's absolutely fantastic. It's so stupid, I love it.
I have to say, I haven't done any of that with any of my MWO Annihilators. I might have to modify one. I did play one on tabletop once. When it eventually got into range and the rest of my lance was dead, then it was looking really terrifying.
Oh, LBXs are hilariously fun. I would highly recommend using LBXs in MechWarrior Online. They're fantastically funny. I run a Marauder that's got like two LBX 10s in it. It's very fun.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So there are a few other ridiculous versions of this mech which we'll talk about. You mentioned the Gosszilla earlier. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And this inspired what I can only describe as the greatest meme of all time. And I don't know the exact history of it because I'm not super involved in MechWarrior Online's community, but this is my rough understanding of it. Somebody playing the game went, you know what would be funny? There's enough critical slots to do it. I'm pretty sure I can fit it on there. He took an Annihilator, stripped literally everything off of it, made it the most glass cannon thing ever, and then put 5 Gauss rifles in his Annihilator. 5 of them. And this was pointlessly over the top. It's a complete joke as well. Like, it's not serious, and it's official, quote-unquote, in the lore in the kind of way where it's like the writers touch the side of their nose and they kind of like wink at you, or it's quote-unquote canon, but it's like a silly joke. Somebody in the setting, a Clan Ghost Bear member, Brian Kabinski, I think, he's the one that made it in the lore, and then he used it a few times, and then it immediately got lost. It just disappeared. Like, got destroyed or something, yeah. The mech was lost to history, known as Gosszilla, a custom variant.
Blokes in sheds strike again.
Exactly. But there is a really, really funny one. I don't think this is particularly effective at anything against, like, except, like, vehicles and small stuff, because none of its weapons really do much damage, but it's just got so many of them. It's hilarious. So this is the 3A. And again, they upgrade the medium lasers to the extended range version. It's got 4 of them, but they swapped out all of the guns, gave it a targeting computer so it's way more accurate, and then what they did is they put 8 autocannon 2s in there. 8 of them. And those things fire like every second, pretty much. It's the closest you're going to get to an autocannon scale machine gun. And you just imagine it's a solid stream of bullets. The Annihilator... Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you here. So I'm going to cut you off there for a second, because this is literally the difference between the normal Annihilators firing explosives and artillery at you versus the 3A walking up and sandblasting you to death with the highest pressure machine it can.
I'm just trying to do that math in my head, so that's 8 times 2 times every second, which equals ridiculousness.
Yeah, it's insane. The only problem with weapons that rely on, like, staring at the enemy, like rotary autocannons, is, well, you have to stare at the enemy. You're going to take a lot of return fire while you're doing it, and if the enemy moves out of line of sight or something, you're going to miss the majority of your damage. Because if you fire autocannon 2s, like, 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 volleys, yeah, you've done a lot of damage, but would that really be the same damage as, you know, double tapping 4 UAC 10s? I don't think so. It has the advantage of having way higher damage over time than almost all the other builds here. Absolutely piss poor upfront damage. You really just have to sit there and stare at your enemy. If the enemy stares back, you'll kill them really quickly.
I'm also just wondering, that probably sounds like it's going to have a real problem when it comes to ammunition consumption.
Oh, absolutely. Like, AC2 ammo is very small, so you can fit... I think it was... Yeah.
8 AC2s.
Yeah, I think it was like over 100 shots per ton or something like that. I could be very off on that, but I think that's accurate for AC2s. And the last special variant, which I think is really funny, is the Schwerer Gustav, which is a Frankenmech. It was built on the Annihilator chassis, but it's like a specially customized version that has a whole bunch of parts stripped off. There is an image that I will give you. It looks roughly like the shape of an Annihilator, but it's very, very obvious that they stripped a whole bunch of stuff off and moved things around. And as you
Oh
can,
my! What have they done?
yeah, as
Look at how they massacred my boy.
as you can tell,
What have you done?
as you can tell, it looks like they put a couple different mech's arms on the left and right side. They moved the cockpit all the way down to the front where I said it should be to begin with. And they put a colossal artillery piece on the back.
Joey, what did they do to you?
Oh no, it's a thumper cannon. Okay, it's the slightly it's the slightly smaller version of like the long tom.
Does this by any chance cause earthquakes?
No, but it can hit mechs so hard that it immediately knocks them over. Like if you hit them with it, it knocks them off their feet and sends them flying. And if you hit nearby, it's still gonna do an insane amount of damage. And if it hits nearby a light mech, it's probably just gonna kill them. Oh my god, no, not the missile no.
Yes.
No, not the no.
Yes.
No.
You're not getting away without it.
No.
You're not getting away without the meme.
It's not
baby.
a canon version.
The meme,
it's not a canon version.
The
no.
meme, baby.
No. LRM 80.
The
No.
meme,
LRM
there
80
is...
Annihilator is not canon. It's not real.
Oh.
It can't hurt me.
No. Oh no, Sai. I'm not talking about LRM.
Oh god,
80.
are those MRM 40s?
I'm talking. You can put. What was it? 2 MRM 30s and 2 MRM 40s on it. So that's MRM 80 plus MRM 60. So that's MRM 140.
Oh my god, that's so stupid. How much ammo does it? How much ammo would that even carry? You got like what, 2 tons of ammo in there? You fire it twice and you're out of ammo.
Well, I had an experience yesterday actually, just with some friends, and I can tell you one thing: it has enough ammo to eviscerate a hunchback. It doesn't then have enough ammo to chase down the little stealth raven that keeps poking your back.
Yeah.
You'll run out of ammo there.
Yeah, I mean, when you're using an assault mech, if the enemy is a good light mech player, you just get eaten alive. There's really not much you can do.
Yeah.
You just sit there as they eat your ass, and you just gotta be like, stop, get away, no, as you're trying to like, you're trying to find a building to put your back against or something.
Yes, it is exactly what I did, and then just use my anti-pigeon laser. Always keep the anti-pigeon laser. You never know when it's going to come in useful.
The single small laser shooting the Raven. Yeah, that's definitely gonna work.
But yes, well, to otherwise describe it, to make a Star Trek reference, I am a Star Trek channel after all, the Cardassian neck annihilator.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. It's so fugly. Venom, it's so fugly.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful boy.
Awful.
The best fun you can have is get a friend, both of you get your mean babies, you load them up with MRMs, and then you do just a straight Mexican standoff, just straight like shootout along a like straight line. You can't move, you just have to stand there and just try and shrug each other's missiles as best you can.
Oh my god, that sounds like the equivalent of, hey, friend of mine, you want to have a headbutting competition with the wall and whoever blacks out first loses?
Yes.
You know what?
You mean like every single drinking game?
Yeah, that describes most mech warriors and most people who play in the setting pretty accurately, so I'll give you that. That's pretty much it for the Annihilator. There are some smaller examples of battles it's been a part in, but to discuss that in any serious detail, it'd probably have to be like an entire separate video's worth of content. This actually, as the very last thing I want to talk about, what the hell is up with the head? Why does it loop back like that so much? Is there a staircase in there that you climb up to get to the cockpit? Like, why is it like that?
This is an excellent question. Well, as we question when you watch like the BattleTech show, obviously silly cartoon is silly cartoon, but you look at some of those mechs and you go, even in like with the King Crab, and you go, do you have like a penthouse in the back? I mean, you might be dropped on a planet, with little logistical support. You just, you got to live out your mech, particularly in a world where nukes are so common and just dropped for the funsies.
I mean, believe it or not,
real...
some of them do, some of them don't. It's not something you can say with any set certainty, but like there are versions of the Marauder that have like a second cockpit put in there for like a combat control and like leadership role. You can remove that, and there's like space to put a bed in the Marauder. There are assault mechs that canonically like have toilets and like small micro kitchens, which is like like a tiny little microwave and like packages and stuff for drinks and soup and like ramen.
Well, I'm going to wave the British flag here and say that when we were the first to put a boiling vessel in a tank, which meant that you could have tea in your tanks.
You know what? You're 100% right, Venom. You are 100% right. The Annihilator has an entire fucking kitchen in the back of the head. That's why it's there, and it's got a nice big tea set. The Annihilator is British. It inherited the soul of Britain. You can claim the Annihilator as yet another British Franken machine. An abomination.
Yes.
Anyways, though, that is finally the end of the Annihilator. 4 Urbanmechs in a trench coat for about as powerful as it is, and that's pretty much it. Would you like to finish off with a little bit of a shill for your own channel? Give people some info, you know, reiterate what you do, encourage them to head over there before I do my outro and stuff.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on, Sai. You can come and see us. We're gonna do a video over on my channel. I won't spoil exactly what it will be about, but it will be about something similarly unhinged and absurd. So come along for that. I do mostly Star Trek content, but it's in a very similar vein to battletech and other sci-fi, very much looking at the in-depth equipment and everything. So if you enjoy battletech, you'll probably enjoy my content.
He also goes significantly more into depth and detail. Like, a lot of the stuff I gloss over or simplify because entertainment before education. But if you want like a decently comedic, decently entertaining with a lot more information, a lot more well done, arguably a lot higher production value because we do this in one take here on Psy, go check out Venom Geek as well. He makes some pretty great videos on Star Trek stuff, and he makes a lot of content on really obscure Star Trek stuff as well. So if you really want to dive into the lore, if you're really into the setting, he's a great channel to go check that out.
You overestimate my competence.
You underestimate my stupidity. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Before we fully end off, though, a huge thanks to everybody that watched this far in the video. Feeding the algorithm those watch minutes really helps the channel, with a huge special thank you to all the generous people who are supporting the channel directly through Patreon, and to all the members of the $5 tier going above and beyond. Thank you very much to David G, the original Augie, 11 Bravo Crunchy, Terry Higgins, Pedro Munaz, David G, the other one, Silencer, Vox Apollyon, Phoenix, BT Legend, Electroboy 11, Logan Maynard, Mickey, David Armon, Cree Dome, Robin Stoppet, Fenrir Striker, Tachi Takane, He's Deb, Pixie, Vertus, Fabric445, Anchovy Bob, Mini Crustacean, Charles the Snep, Paulie, Eric Jones, Joseph Holiday, Zombie the Zerker, David B, Sweet B, Rastro, Le Butcher, Stabby Taco, Nomquam, Brian Hall, John Gabrielle, Joshua J. Lee, The Hayfork, Unit Zero, Tarly Bob, Kiwi Warrior, Douglas Jerema, Jason Vigo, Screaming Stuka, Darius D, Exothermic, Roscoe292, Christoph Grimberg, Baron AJ, CT7274, Freedom Trooper, Steven Ventura, Zephyr Windstar, Harbinger, Oscar Reed, Skogan, and I believe the new guys, Wolfie and... yeah, no, just you. Congratulations. You get a special at the end of the thing. And thank you again to everyone who supports the channel. It's greatly appreciated. I hope it'll continue in the future, and you guys really help a lot on the back end with real life costs of living, and especially my groceries. And with that, the video is over. Outros are incredibly hard. Goodbye, I'll see you when I see you, maybe on a different channel.
See you around, guys.